Hello, Eagles Nation. Vincent Foast here, and welcome to a Week 6 Eagles chat where the Giants turn the Eagles into more of a giant mess than they were in previous weeks. We have a lot to talk about coming up on Eagles chat. Some ranting, some not ranting. I think most of it is going to be ranting, but we're going to get into that coming up in a matter of moments. But before we do so, make sure to like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as well as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds. And you can also find our Instagram in the description of this Eagles chat video. But now let's get right into it. First, starting off with the injury update. Now, on this injury update, we have two big-time players, and the first one we have is Jalen Carter. Now, of course, right before the game, Jalen Carter was ruled out, and he was indeed ruled out with a heel injury. Now, yes, he did not play a single snap. Like I said, this was literally almost a game-time decision. He was ruled out just before Thursday Night Football begun. So that's something kind of unfortunate, and it definitely showed, as that was a big gap that was left there on the Eagles defensive line. So unfortunately, Carter out with a heel injury. We'll make sure to keep you updated as more reports come out over this weekend and into next week. And of course, the next big time injury we have up here is, yes, cornerback Quinyon Mitchell for the Birds, as he left the game in the second quarter with an apparent hamstring injury. And of course, he was ruled out for the rest of the game. He was taken back to the locker room. He was looked at, and then when he returned, he had a little bit of a beanie hat on and was not looking to return in that game. And of course, like I said, the turf monster strikes again. What did I say at the end of last week's Eagles chat? In this game, please, knowing MetLife's turf, can there not be a big-time injury like this? And that's the last thing I want to see. Hamstring injuries, ACL injuries, they all live at MetLife Stadium. Let's just be happy we don't have to play at MetLife again against like the New York Jets or something. Let's just take our W's where we can find them. Wasn't a lot of good things that came out of yesterday, but hey, a good thing is we don't got to go back to MetLife this year. So I'll take the wins where I can find them, especially with a game that we saw yesterday. Yeah, we need to find W's, all right. But now getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit more, and I'm going to first start off with the defense and just going off of it. What in the world, all right? And this is something where I'm sure a lot of you tuned in for, was to see my rant on the defense, and this is something where, I mean, there's not much else to say. And of course, I'm covering a pretty broad area, and that was defensive line / the secondary woes. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to have a specific player highlighted here. I'm going to go all over the place. And like I said, I mean, this is something where, I mean, coming into this game, the Eagles had an EPA, which stands for expected points added per play. They were at 0.05, which was tied for ninth in the NFL. So that was the stat coming into the game for the Eagles. An EPA of 0.05, which was tied ninth for the NFL. And this is something that the Eagles, I mean, in past games were, they were really honed in on, especially on the defensive side of things. And who would have thought that Jackson Dart was, I mean, especially as much of a shifty runner that he has been in the past. He has totaled, of course, 109 yards in the past two of his prior starts. But this is something where who would have expected Dart to absolutely juke out an all-pro linebacker like Zack Baun? Now, this is something where, of course, on that play, and when I'm specifically talking about was the play where he juked out Zack Baun for that 20-yard touchdown on the opening drive for New York. This is something where, when you look at that play for Zack Baun's defense, here's something I'll give for in defense of Zack Baun. When you look at that entire play in general, of course, Zack Baun was the spy on Jackson Dart. Okay, that was what was going on in that whole situation. And you saw when the offensive line and the defensive lines opened up, you saw in that type of situation that there was a good amount of space between Zack Baun and, of course, Jackson Dart. Now, in that type of situation, knowing the slippery runner that Dart is, and of course, yeah, obviously, he's a mobile quarterback, and he was before he got in the NFL. This is something that we knew. But in that type of situation and the way things were set up, the amount of space in between Dart and Baun was pretty crazy. And for a linebacker to really hone in that as much space that was given, it gives Dart every opportunity to make any move he wants. Because, again, he knows where he's going. Baun doesn't. And this is that type of situation where on the ground, who knows what can happen. And, hey, I'll give it to Dart. He ran it down the Eagles' throats absolutely yesterday in a big-time way. And, I mean, again, this was a big, big game for Dart. He had 58 yards on the ground on 13 carries yesterday. Of course, that one rushing touchdown that I was just talking about right on the opening drive. But this is something where he ran it down the Eagles' throats, and something where even for Zach Bond yesterday, yeah, I'll defend him on that play, but there were a couple other plays where, man, he blew his position in a big time way. And not just to say Bond did, I'm not going to put it all on him. The Eagles were blowing, pressure throughout the entire game. Jordan Davis wasn't exactly a great outing for him. The amount of pressure that they were getting on this New York offense was pretty much almost not existent. They had some times where they got good pressure on Dart, but a lot of the time, there was a portion in the game, the defensive line for the Birds started to look like they were starting to figure out something or getting something sparked. But by the time they did, it started to again kind of fall apart. And this is something where, the Giants receiving core, and moving on, of course, Giants receiving core, it's not like it's the best thing in the world. And of course, the Giants elevated a Jordan Humphrey from their practice squad. And we saw a little bit of him last night by a big way. And of course, knowing Humphrey's size, he was able to take over the Eagles cornerbacks in a big time way, especially having guys like Kelee Ringo out there. And of course, Adoree Jackson. I'll rant on them in a little bit. You already know that's coming. But this is something, again, where you look at that whole situation and the size disadvantage, of course, that the Eagles cornerbacks had against Humphrey. He was able to get to them quite a few times. And of course, talking about Humphrey, well, he got a good 34-yard gain against Ringo on a 3rd and 12 throw that set up Dart for a scrambling score. Of course, that was the touchdown that I was talking about before this, of course, the Dart scrambling touchdown, right, against Bond. But this is something where, the Giants were utilizing the size ability and the size factor that they had in that offense, of course, over the Eagles. And they definitely used it in a big way. And, of course, looking at the Giants offense again, especially on 3rd downs, this was something they converted 11 of 16 of their 3rd downs. So this is a Giants offense that just kept pouring it on. And, any little area that they saw, they got it. There were many passes available over the middle. There was a lot of blown coverage. Of course, we saw some other mistakes from, I'll take some anger off the cornerbacks for a second before I go back and continue to rant about them, because I'm not done with them yet. But looking at, as well, some of the Eagles safeties. Again, Andrew Mukuba. Rookie Andrew Mukuba, right? Well, speaking of rookie, there were a good amount of rookie mistakes that were made by him yesterday. Of course, a few times he got caught covering the wrong guy, and by the time he noticed, the throw was already out, was already caught. And this was something where multiple times they just, whether you want to talk about Adoree Jackson, Kelee Ringo, Andrew Mukuba, multiple times where they were either not on their guy, it was blown coverage, or they were covering the wrong guy, where 2 of them ran and to cover one specific receiver. Meanwhile, there's a guy wide open doing a curl route ready to receive a pass, and Dart hit him immediately. So this is something where there was confusion all over the place, something that it was just not developing. And in a situation like this, the Giants they saw an opportunity, they took it to them. There were many passes available over the middle. It was just the Eagles secondary in general was not picking up, period, on the pass game. And this is something where over and over again, we saw it. The Giants were walking down the field. They weren't necessarily taking long drives in a lot of situations. They were walking down the field. And again, like I said, even when they would get the 3rd down, and even when they would get to a point where they would be somewhat pressured, well, they went 11 of 16, they converted 11 of 16 of their 3rd down. So yeah, not great, nothing to write home about, something that we kind of just want to throw in the trunk, forget about it, maybe even burn it at this point. But a game like this, maybe is something that needed to happen. Remember last year, the Eagles got torched by the Buccaneers 33-16. What happened after that? They went into that bye week last year and they came out, didn't lose the game since. So this is something where, hey, is this something the Eagles need? Last week was more of a closer, a little bit of a closer loss, right? But this time you had both sides of the ball completely shut down, being the Eagles offense and defense. And usually, you look at it, the Eagles defense was mostly known this year, 100% known this year, for bailing the Eagles out. Well, this time they were on the exact same level as the Birds. And of course, injuries did not help, not having guys like Jalen Carter, not having guys like Quinyon Mitchell. And we definitely noticed that. And this is something where, again, I have to mention this. I've mentioned it before in Eagles chats. And this is something where Howie Roseman, by not signing Isaiah Rodgers, in my opinion, and I'm sure some others' opinions, this really killed the Eagles in a big time way. Isaiah Rodgers, I mean, I'm not saying in no way was he the best thing in the world, okay? I'm not going to say Isaiah Rodgers was he's another Quinyon Mitchell, okay? I'm not going on that level, but he was at least something. The guys that you have in there now, being Adoree Jackson and Kelee Ringo, were getting absolutely killed and torched in the preseason. And they were getting torched and murdered in the preseason by second and third stringers. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying that these are the guys that are going to help the Eagles secondary to get back on track once again. And I know there were some people that came out and said, well, they're obviously good at, obviously good enough to be in the position that they're in. Well, it doesn't matter. These guys got torched in preseason with second and third stringer wide receivers. And here we go again against the Giants that doesn't have the best receiving core in the world, and they're getting torched by them as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Giants receiving core is the worst thing in the world, but they're certainly not the best thing in the world. And this is something where they were getting ran all over last night. And of course, then you also have guys, well, they could be waiting for Jakorian Bennett. Well, yeah, he's hurt. He is still on IR right now. So this is something where, what are they doing? Are they waiting for Jakorian Bennett to get healthy again? Obviously, they're going to be waiting for Q to get healthy again. That's obvious. But what is your backup situation? Getting rid of Isaiah Rodgers was an absolutely ridiculous move. And as good as Howie Roseman was this past offseason, I should say, in past offseasons in general, this offseason, anything. As good as he was, that was a awful maneuver getting rid of his Isaiah Rodgers. Even when the amount of money he was offering to come back for, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't something absolutely nuts. He wasn't, saying, no, millions and millions of dollars for me to come back. It wasn't something outrageous. I understand the situation the Eagles were in with trying to, in general, with their money, right? Resigning guys, of course, main concerns like getting Zach Bond back, things like that. I understand that. But Isaiah Rodgers was not looking to have, a huge contract. He wasn't looking to be paid, in a big time way. This is something where he could have been re-signed. And, it's just right there. It's really killing him. And still, I will say it to this day, Howie Roseman, as good as he's been, really messed up on that decision right there in the offseason, not bringing Rodgers back. Again, agree, he's not the best thing in the world, but he is something. And right now what you have with Adoree Jackson and Kelee Ringo being cooked since preseason, I should say, should be a little bit of a fine print thing below their names. Cooked since preseason. Yeah, that's the situation that we're in right now. And if these are the guys that we're willing to rely on for our secondary, I think you have a lot to worry about, as really your safeties were the only thing. Now, of course, we all know some people were talking about, some certain areas with Cooper DeJean possibly, maybe they could move him up. Of course, DeJean was at the nickelback position last night. But could this be a possible option for cornerback DeJean? Could they possibly get him there as well? We don't quite know, but at this time, I'm willing to accept anything. And of course, I wasn't expecting Vic Fangio to make any big time changes like that in the middle of a game. We know Vic Fangio, when he has his game plan, we don't expect there to be a complete change around. When Vic Fangio sticks with something, that's the way it's going to be. He's not the one to completely, mess with guys, momentum and just in general throughout the middle of a game. But still, that's something to bring up. Could we be seeing some movement from, Cooper DeJean, as he's the team's second best option for at that outside cornerback position? So, at this time, that's where it stands. And, we'll just have to see how things roll in the future. But yeah, overall, not necessarily that great. Holding Jackson Dart, well, that didn't happen. Jackson Dart yesterday went 17 out of 25 for his passing for 195 yards. It seemed like he had a little more than that, but no, 195 is it. Of course, he had a one passing touchdown, and of course, a 112.58 QB rating. And we already know the guy who really torched the Eagles yesterday were the Eagles defensive line had absolutely no answer. He was running through them like they were Swiss cheese. And that was, yes, Cam Skattebo, who had 19 carries for just under 100 yards on the ground. He had 98 yards, 2 yards short of that. And of course, yeah, folks, I don't need to say anything else, but yeah, he had 3 touchdowns. So, at that point in time, for a team that usually torches other teams on the run game, yeah, they got a little bit of their own medicine. Absolutely ran the ball down the Eagles' throat yesterday with Cam Skattebo. Great pickup for the Giants. And of course, the rookie duo right there, Dart, Skattebo. I have nothing else to say. They ran it down the Eagles' throat. They torched the Eagles. They owned the Eagles yesterday, and they turned the Eagles into a, yes, I'll say it, giant mess. And yeah, no pun intended there, but not a great outing. And yeah, not much else to say in terms of the defense. I got my rant out of the way for today. For now, I should say, right? But now, moving forward in this Eagles chat, of course, yes, we already got to go to the offense. We have to go to the offense, and that is right here. I'm going to go right into it. And that is basically forcing plays and as well the drama within the offense, something that I need to cover. Now, of course, when I talk about forcing plays, I want to get something straight for a second. And we all know the talent that the Eagles had. I mean, you have to be blind to not see the talent that the Eagles have. They have a stacked roster, especially on paper, right? We know this. Anyone who, I mean, if you don't have a brain, that's the only way you wouldn't know it, right? We understand the talent that's on the squad. I don't need to explain or go into any more detail, okay? But overall, I feel like the Eagles, in the situation they are trying to be something that they are not. Their identity is completely gone. And we know, what was the identity in the past from the Eagles? Well, it was simple. If you're going to clog up the run and you're not going to let us run, we'll kill you with the pass. If you'll if you'll stop the pass, we'll switch to the run, we'll kill you with the run. And say, hey, even if you're good at stopping our run game, we'll still find a way to run it down your throat because we'll run a balanced offense. We'll get you with the pass sometimes. We'll get you with the run game sometimes. We'll run a balanced offense to the point where you don't know what's coming at you. You don't know where your linebackers are going to sit. And there were many times, even last season, where I saw opposing teams' defenses with all the movement before the ball snapped in the secondary because they did not know what was going to happen, especially in the postseason for the Eagles. Many times you didn't know what the Eagles were going to do. Were they going to attack with a great pass over the middle, or were they going to run it right down your throats? What I'm seeing right now from the offense is they just don't seem to have an identity. They're trying to be something, like I said, that they are not, and it's really showing in a big time way. I mean, at the beginning of the game, it was something where, I mean, it looked like they just didn't have any trust in any other play. And you know exactly where I'm going with this. They did 4 straight tush pushes. And on that drive, of course, that was an 8-minute drive, right? But when they got down to the red zone, there was a point where they did 4 straight tush pushes. Of course, that was it was like, what was it, 1st and goal. They just tush pushed their way until they got it. I think they were on like the 4-yard line or something like that, and they just tush pushed their way. I mean, at this point, just do a tush push every single play. It's kind of, I heard someone say it's kind of like the Madden glitch where you're playing Madden and you know that one glitch play that can get you down the field guaranteed. Well, that's kind of what's happening now with the Eagles. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think the tush push should be banned or whatnot. But the way that they were using it yesterday, it was kind of sad in a way because it was just, that's the only thing that you trust your offense can do without mistake. That's it. Any other play, it's like you're basically holding your breath at this point. And I know that's how I feel every time the Eagles are in the red zone and they have an opportunity. I mean, the Eagles went from having a perfect red zone number to pretty much scoring every single time they were in the red zone. We remember that, right? That ended last week. But I mean, at this point in time, the tush push is the only play that they can come through on. Any other play, it's kind of like just hold your breath and hope it's not a stupid turnover, a stupid sack that happens, or a stupid penalty that happens on the end of the play. It's just something that it's kind of a constant. I mean, I really don't know what else to say. That was the first time, and I know some other Eagles fans said this as well, really the first time that I actually felt embarrassed with the Eagles doing the tush push. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but maybe I don't make sense. Maybe I sound like an absolute moron right now, but I don't know. Seeing the four straight tush pushes like that at the end of the drive, I don't know. It's something that I'm not proud of seeing by any means. First time I felt embarrassed by the tush push, I have to say ever, really. But of course now, after seeing something like that, and of course, looking at the in general play, with Jalen Hurts' play overall, I mean, this was something where his ability to get the ball out of the pocket, of course, he had the one passing touchdown, but again, it was just a very, very strange concept where I'm pretty sure they had, what was it? It was like around 3 receivers. They had 3 of their wide receivers for the Birds were lined up to the right side. They had everyone clumped together. And then Hurts did this little strange flip type of pass to Dallas Goedert for the touchdown. It was kind of the strangest play setup that I ever saw. And of course, we saw a bunch of that really back in the LA Rams game 2 weeks ago, where there was like these strange flip passes where Hurts just got the ball off, did a little flip to Goddard, and then that was your touchdown. So it's just like these plays, I mean, are just probably the strangest things I've ever seen. But again, it's just the Eagles offense. I feel like they're just trying too hard. And a coordinator that just doesn't, I mean, again, just doesn't adjust. He's so easy to figure out. It's the same thing every time with the run play or whether it's with the pass game. I mean, there were a lot of people saying you're forcing the pass too much. Just run the ball. Well, even when they run the ball, you look at the play designs. How many times yesterday did we see Saquon Barkley run into the back of one of his own linemen? I mean, this is something yesterday where, don't get me wrong, I understand the offensive line is hurt. I mean, you have guys like Landon Dickerson who are out. I understand that whole situation. The offensive line has been beat up, right? I get that. But still, I mean, it's just the play setups and the just how they set up in key situations, how they, what plays are called in key situations. I just don't see an offensive coordinator that has a good play plan. It just seems to be something where, I mean, knowing an offensive coordinator, again, I said this in last week's Eagles chat, an offensive coordinator doesn't just call and set up the play for that specific play. He's setting up a play for down the line. It sets up for future plays. It sets up for how the game develops into the future. And right now, what I'm seeing from Kevin Patullo, I don't necessarily see any type of play calling method where it does set up anything for the future. It just seems like he only has one half, and in this situation it was really only one quarter of football planned out, because otherwise it's so easy for opposing teams' defensive coordinators to figure out this offensive style, to figure out their plans of attack, and it's so easy to read. It is so easy to read, and that's what I'm seeing week after week. He doesn't have a set bunch of plays that can set up the future of a game. He doesn't think ahead into the third quarter or into the fourth quarter. The plays are just, I mean, I don't know. They're kind of just all over the place. It doesn't seem like a set playbook. It just seems like something where we throw in random things at certain times and hope they stick. And if they do, great. I mean, it's just, I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of blanked out at this point. I mean, this is seeing a game like that being blown out against the New York Giants. I don't know. That just hits some different way. But again, now moving on to, the drama part of the offensive slide here. And of course, that's the whole thing with A.J. Brown, right? There's a lot going on in this Eagles locker room at this time. And of course, A.J. Brown was talked to after the game yesterday. And of course, remember in the news leading up to this game, of course, last week after the Denver Broncos game, it was said that Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and A.J. Brown all met after the game, and they talked things over on why the miscommunication happened last week in the Denver game. Of course, there was a lot of miscue that was going on in the Denver game, and that was the claim. They all talked about this. Well, A.J. Brown was interviewed after the game, and he came up with basically saying that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't recall. All this was said. And here we go again. This is something where, I mean, at this point with A.J. Brown, I have to say one thing. Grow up. I'm sick of it. And there's many things where, of course, we know what he's been doing when he took to Twitter, X, when he took to X and, explained his frustration. This is something where when he was doing that, even when he took to X, the Eagles were winning at that time. This is something where it's unnecessary. I understand the caliber of the type of caliber of a player that A.J. Brown is, the talent that A.J. Brown has. I get all that. I understand. But especially back when your team was winning and you came out on X saying your displeasure, acting like, no one cares about you in a way. It kind of gave off a vibe like that. Kind of how like that 4-year-old that is not getting enough attention at the kitchen table, and next thing you know, he starts feeling sorry for himself. Well, that's kind of the vibes A.J. Brown is giving off. And of course, now this week, that never happened. No, it's something where, at this point in time, grow up. And even, you even got responses from guys like Travis Kelce. Of course, this quote came out last week, but Travis Kelce saying, quote, "It's also really hard for me to get mad when we are winning. I don't find that energy or that feeling in me if we are winning. If we're having success, if we're putting up points, if we're winning football games, that's all that matters." And this is coming, of course, from Travis Kelce. And of course, a lot of people may be saying right now, well, Travis Kelce can't talk. He bumped Andy Reid again this year. Of course, remember when he bumped Andy Reid, his head coach, a couple years ago in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. Well, he bumped Andy Reid again. But I think where Kelce is going with in this type of quote is where leave it on the field. Leave it on the field. There's no reason to bring it out to the media. Of course, we know the media will already make drama itself. The media doesn't need your help to make drama around your team. And especially we know how the Philly media works and whatnot. Yes, they will create the drama for you. You don't need to go helping them. And something where your team, especially now, has lost 2 in a row and has been, unfortunately, kind of in this downward spiral. The last thing that you need to do is bring up big time drama in this situation. Let that stuff stay in the locker room. There's no reason anyone outside of the Eagles organization needs to know about stuff like this. Frankly, it's none of anyone's business. It's none of my business. Some stuff just needs to stay in the locker room. And with stuff like this, bringing up unnecessary drama, now it's even worse that the team is not doing so well and lost back-to-back games and got blown out by a rival who hasn't been relevant in years. But now you're bringing, unnecessary anger, unnecessary drama, and something where already parting the locker room, where injuries are already haunting your team. Now momentum's haunting your team. It's just everything's off. Drama is the last thing you need. And now the Eagles are adding that to the list as well. So something where, yeah, not the greatest thing in the world, something that I really did not want to see. And at the end of the day, all I have to say to A.J. Brown is grow up. Simple as that. Don't need drama. But now moving on to, of course, our final slide for today, and that is Jalen Hurts' play, of course. Yes, folks, the stat came in yesterday. Jalen Hurts threw his first interception of his career in the red zone, which was returned to the Eagles' 23-yard line. We all know what happened yesterday. Things were starting to fall apart. Every time the Eagles' offense looked like they were starting to get some type of rhythm, it was ended like that. And of course, we know another situation that happened when the Eagles were moving down the field at a good rate, of course, looking to possibly spark a little bit of a comeback session. Well, yes, Eagles were moving down the field in a good way. Jalen Hurts threw a beautiful pass over the middle to A.J. Dillon. And what happened? A.J. Dillon, trying to move upfield, fell, fumbled the ball, and after that, I pretty much turned the TV off, went to bed. That sealed the game after that. Giants got possession back, and yeah, it was history from there. But overall, Jalen Hurts' stats on the game, 24 out of 33 for his passing. Of course, 283 yards, 1 touchdown, that 1 interception, like I just mentioned, and a QB rating of 105.19. So, yes, unfortunate for Jalen Hurts. Of course, the pocket awareness is another thing that still has me concerned with Jalen Hurts. Of course, we saw yesterday many times where the pocket was surrounding again. Did not necessarily feel. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't feel the pressure and went down with the ship. And there were also a couple times where, yes, folks, I still wish that Hurts would have stepped up in the pocket in certain situations. But again, knowing the offensive line yesterday, it was hurt. Now, don't get me wrong. There were multiple times yesterday where Jalen Hurts was back in that pocket for it felt like about 2 hours yesterday. There were many times where Hurts was giving so much time. And I don't know if it's, again, that situation where no one's open downfield or what it is. But I don't want to hear that excuse that Jalen Hurts has no time. Because, yes, were there times that the pocket faded fast? Absolutely. But were there many times yesterday where he had about 2 to 3 years to throw in the pocket? Yes. So in no way do I want to hear that Jalen Hurts had absolutely no time back in the pocket. It collapsed fast sometimes, but a lot of times there were pretty much about 2 hours of time for Hurts in the pocket, and he was not able to make much of it. So this is something where, in general, the offense has no rhythm, and when they do get in the rhythm, a big-time turnover happens. So this is just, at this point in time, what we are seeing out of the offense, how we are seeing it develop, is something where I'm not necessarily jumping out of my skin for. There are drives where it does look good. There are times where it looks like that Super Bowl team that we witnessed last year. And then there are other times where they start looking like the New York Jets. This is just something where you don't know what you're getting. That inconsistency is there. And at this point in time, and I will say it, this game coming up next, right here, Week 7, is an extremely important game. It is probably the most important game for the Eagles since last year at around this time. This is that situation where it can either divide the Eagles from a Brian Johnson year or a Kellen Moore year. And what I mean by that is last year, of course, with Kellen Moore, what happened? The Eagles, like I said, they had a big-time blowout loss. Of course, remember that against the Buccaneers, right? Remember what happened in Week 4 last year. Eagles had a blowout loss. They lost 33-16 to the Bucs in Tampa Bay. They went into that bye week. Next thing you know, they came out. They barely won against the Browns, but then they started to get a winning streak going. in this type of situation, you're going up against a Minnesota Vikings team that you should win against. Yes, I understand it's in Minnesota, but you should get this win right here. This game is extremely important because right here, this is the opportunity. How do the Eagles respond after a big kick in the rear end? They've had back-to-back losses. There was a time, of course, before Denver where they didn't lose a game in a calendar year. It was a whole calendar year since the Eagles lost the last game. Well, that's history now. They have now lost 2 of their past 2 games. They've lost both of their past 2 games, obviously. They have a losing streak of 2. This game right here will show the type of football team that they are. Really good football teams show up and come back in big ways after bad losses. And we saw that last year from the Eagles. They were able to show what they were about. They responded in a big-time way with great grit and great momentum after a big-time loss. Will that happen this time? We don't know. But again, I will say it and mark it. This game right here is probably the most important game for the Eagles in over a year. And yes, I mean that by far more important probably than some of those postseason games last year. This will decide if the Eagles, I have to say this, this will decide if the Eagles are going back to having a great postseason run again. This game right here. Can they rebound? We'll just have to wait and see. But that's coming up next week, Sunday, October 19th at 1 o'clock p.m. This is a big one right here, folks. Will they roll over or will they come back in a big-time way to show why they were Super Bowl champions last season? We'll just have to wait and see. Only time will tell. That's going to do it for the Week 6 Eagles chat, folks. Hopefully the Birds can come back. Wasn't exactly the game that we wanted to see. Eagles getting completely blown out by a New York Giants team that has not been relevant in years. But hey, was it the kick in the rear end that they needed? We're going to find out next week. That's all for me for the Week 6 Eagles chat. Have a good one, folks. And as always, go Birds! Have a great weekend of relaxing football, right? Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week. Next week, we'll be back here to cover the Eagles-Vikings matchup out of Minnesota.